JJK recently came to an end, and many readers are left feeling frustrated by the finale. Today, I want to explore why I think that feeling is so common among fans. This video will almost exclusively focus on the manga, so anime-only watchers, please be aware that many spoilers are ahead. Getting right into things, I think the majority of these frustrations come from the final Sukuna fight, and this is what I'll be focusing on. This fight is long, and understandably so. After all, Sukuna is the king of curses, and this is the manga's finale. The main issue that I see in this fight is its overall structure. In many of the chapters, things just kind of happen with no context or build-up. This leads to a lot of different issues that leave readers feeling left out of the loop. To show what I mean, let's go back in the manga to chapter 220 to get some context. The last half of chapter 220 shows the characters discussing some vague ideas on how to free Megumi from Sukuna. Then, in chapter 221, Gojo is freed from the prison realm. Once freed, Gojo makes a bargain with the King of Curses and a date is set for their showdown, December 24th. From here, chapter 222 shows some short scenes of Itadori training, but more importantly, we see a scene with Yuta and Inumaki that provides some setup for a moment in the big fight. This will be important later. After this, time jumps forward to the 24th of December and the final showdown begins. This big time jump is one of the main causes of a lot of the issues within the Sukuna fight, in my opinion. A lot happens in the month leading up to the fight, but we, the reader, get to see none of it until the information is relevant in the battle. An example of this is Yuji learning reverse curse technique. In the month leading up to the finale, Yuji has learned how to use this technique, but there's no context or build up for this happening. We don't get to see him training to learn it or anything of the sort. He can just heal now. I'll revisit this in a moment. For now, let's get back to the start of the fight. The battle starts with Gojo facing off against Sukuna alone, and I actually have no issues with this fight, including the ending. Look, I love Gojo too, but him dying makes sense. Maybe the methods used by Sukuna to bypass infinity might seem like a cheap trick to some, but to me, his death was inevitable. If JJK ended with Gojo once again coming out on top, it would be very anticlimactic no matter how intense the fight was. Having an overpowered character that always prevails is uninteresting, and it also kills any possible tension. I think his death was inevitable. The issues that I have with the finale come in the chapters after. The rest of this fight kind of feels like two kindergartners playing pretend on the playground. To be clear, I don't hate this finale and I liked a lot of it, but many moments in this fight do have this energy. Initially, the fight starts off great. Higuruma's plan is awesome and so is Yuta's initial domain expansion. Chapter 251 is where the most frustrating trend in this finale begins. Throughout the rest of the fight, the manga will cut back to a time during the month leading up to the battle. These scenes show the main cast discussing whatever strategy was just implemented in the fight or discussing a strategy that's about to be implemented. On occasion, this is fine, but the frequency of this exposition near the end of the story slowed an awesome fight down to a crawl during a lot of chapters. Again, this doesn't ruin the finale, but to me, it makes it clear that a lot of this fight wasn't really planned out all the way, and it also made it sort of a pain to read week to week. A lot of this exposition could have taken place before the fight in order to make the readers aware of the training and planning taking place. We don't need to see every little detail before it happens. After all, big twists are fun and exciting, but a lot of these details just aren't big twists. These are things like Yuji learning reverse curse technique or the arrival of Miguel. Yuji using reverse curse technique isn't really a big twist. All it is just a tool that allows him to endure Sukuna's slashes. A situation like this one would have been better used as a moment of growth for Yuji rather than something that just sort of happens in the fight. This would be way more satisfying and far more interesting than what we actually got in the manga, where Yuji can just use reverse curse technique out of nowhere. The other example I brought up was Miguel's arrival. In the final battle, Miguel appears and he helps save Mei's little brother, who I refuse to look up the name for because Mei is gross as shit. This moment really just comes out of nowhere. Miguel hasn't been in the series in quite some time besides mentions here and there, and so his appearance is quite random. In the next chapter, we see a scene from the past where Yuta goes to him in order to ask for help in the final battle. I'm a-okay with Miguel's appearance in the fight, I just think it would have been better if we got the exposition before the finale begins. In chapter 255 of JJK, the exposition ends with Miguel agreeing to help out. What if instead of this late exposition acting as a crutch for this surprise appearance the chapter before, we got a chapter focused on Yuta going to him and asking for help before the finale? The chapter could contain what we already have in chapter 255, but instead it ends with Miguel not fully agreeing to help. Maybe he's on the fence about helping, and so he tells Yuta that he has to think about it because he has his own home and people to prioritize. Then you could still have this surprise appearance, but it wouldn't come out of absolutely nowhere like it currently currently does. This would completely remove the feeling that Gege wasn't sure what to write next, and so he just pulled Miguel from the character vault. Of course, this isn't what we got, and so this moment kind of just feels like an ass pull and not much more. Speaking of ass pulls, I needed somewhere to plug the subscribe button, so here it is. I make tons of videos similar to this one, so subscribe if you've enjoyed this. You can always unsubscribe later. I'm certain that there's at least one other video on my channel that you'd enjoy as much as you're enjoying this one. I personally recommend my last video on stand design and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Thanks for subscribing if you did. Let's get back to my script. The feeling of unplannedness is a lot worse in a lot of the twists that we get in the final third of the fight. These are twists like Todo's arrival and Nobara's final surprise. Let's keep things chronological and address Todo's surprise first. It's stated in the manga that Yuji couldn't learn about the plan with Todo due to his resonance with Sukuna. If Itadori learned about the plan, then so would Sukuna. While sure, I guess this does kind of make sense, to me it feels a lot more like an excuse. During the fight against Mahito, it's heavily implied that Todo lost his curse technique. Boogie Woogie is activated when Todo claps his hands, and in the Mahito fight, he loses one of his hands and his other is severely damaged after he briefly touches Mahito in order to swap places with Yuji. At the time, I loved this supposed ending for Todo. Todo gets to live, but there are still severe consequences resulting from his face-off with Mahito. It's important to note here that Todo is nowhere to be found during the Colon Games arc. I bring up the Colon Games arc because at the start of the arc, Megumi is still himself and no one but Sukuna knows about his true plans to take over Megumi's body. There are some implications about the possible plan, like when Sukuna heals Megumi after he's nearly killed by Maharaga, but no one at Jujutsu High would have known about this plan. With this stated fact in mind, there would be no reason why people would keep the possibility of Todo regaining his technique from Itadori until after Sukuna had taken over Megumi's body and the plan to fight him started to form. I find it really hard to believe that the other characters would keep this from Yuji. I can hear the argument already being typed in the comments that Itadori literally has Sukuna inside of him, and so that's why this information was kept from him for so long. It is undeniably true that Yuji is Sukuna's vessel for the majority of the story, but even with this being true, he's still deeply involved in Jujutsu society. If the sorcerers were this concerned about keeping all of their cards close to their chest out of fear of giving Sukuna any information, then Itadori wouldn't be involved in Jujutsu society nearly as much as he is. Of course, a lot of Yuji's involvement is due to Gojo vouching for him and pushing for him to join the school, but even still, I think my point still stands. I bring up all of these details because there are tons of experts at Jujutsu High who would have known that Todo's technique wasn't necessarily gone. I find it extremely unlikely that this possibility was kept entirely from Itadori. I find it far more likely to me that Gege had this amazing ending for Todo planned where he shows up, helps with the Mahito fight, but at the cost of losing his technique, and then later decided he wanted to bring the character back. Again, it's heavily implied that Boogie Woogie is no longer usable after the Mahito fight. And so bringing back Todo like this not only cheapens that fight's ending a lot, but it also makes it seem like this wasn't a planned out surprise at all. Instead, it makes it seem like Gege was just trying to find ways to keep the finale interesting, and so he pulled out a fan favorite character. The second major example like this is Nobara's return. Let me make it clear that I'm super happy that she did come back because she's my favorite of the three, and I even have her skin in Fortnite. The issue with her return is that after she's nearly killed in the Mahito fight, we don't get any updates on her condition until over 100 chapters later. Nobara's death fake out occurs in chapter 125 and her return occurs in chapter 267. That's almost 150 chapters with no update on her condition. It's quite literally almost half the manga. All we get is a vague statement that she might survive after Todo and Arata arrive in Shibuya to help out Yuji. That's it. Nothing else. Nobara spends this time in a coma and she only awakens moments before she helps out in the Sukuna fight with her resonance ability. We really should have gotten some dialogue from the characters about her condition at some point in the manga. Hell, I even think we should have got a full chapter about it. The aftermath of the Shibuya incident isn't really talked about very much besides conversations around Gojo being sealed. Speaking of Gojo, He's her mentor just like he is for Yuji and Megumi. I really think a chapter focused on Gojo learning about her condition after he's unsealed would have done wonders for readers. The chapter would have not only confirmed her condition to readers, but it also could have helped develop Gojo's character further when he sees one of his students in that sort of state. The question is, would this chapter have ruined her sudden surprise in the finale? No, I don't think so. Inside Yuta's domain in the Sukuna fight, Yuta uses Sukuna's own technique against him. Sukuna then theorizes that this must be where his missing finger went. Rika must have eaten it, and that's how Yuta gained access to the technique. However, right before Nobara's surprise, Sukuna figures out that what actually happened is Rika ingested some of Itadori's fingers. This means that his last finger is still out there, and then he's hit with the surprise resonance attack. Gege could have confirmed Nobara's status and then still written in the implication that Rika ate the final Sukuna finger. This would have misled readers into thinking that Nobara's return wouldn't have any impact on the finale. Readers would have thought that even if she reawoke during the battle, she couldn't have done anything to help because of how far away she was. Then the big twist where we find out that Rika actually ate one of Yuji's fingers could have still taken place, and it would have surprised readers and Sukuna alike. The way that Nobara is completely forgotten about for over 100 chapters not only makes it seem like Gege doesn't care about her, but it also implies that none of the other characters do either, due to the lack of any conversation about her. Again, there are over 100 chapters between the incident with Mahito and her eventual return. This means that readers were left in limbo for years regarding her condition. This just served to frustrate readers with no actual additional payoff. I think I've made it clear how more chapters could have helped Jujutsu Kaisen's finale feel more complete and built up to when compared to what we actually got. Before I end this video, I wanted to discuss two more things. First, I want to talk about how not every twist needed more context or build-up in that finale. After all, sometimes a blindside twist can be the most impactful reveal of all. The example I want to use here is one of the more controversial parts of the finale. I'm of course talking about Yuta taking control of Gojo's corpse. I really like this twist. I know some readers didn't, but big moments like this one I love. There's really no setup for this except for a few moments where a character alludes to Yuta's plan, and contrary to everything else I've said in this video, I think that's a good thing. Let me explain. If you've watched any of my other videos, then you probably already know that I fucking love JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. One of my favorite aspects of the anime is how creative stand users can be with their abilities. We the viewer know what a stand's ability is, yet frequently the show surprises us with how the users use their abilities. As an example of this, I'll use one of the first fights from part 4 of JoJo's. Josuke's stand ability Crazy Diamond can repair things. Besides being very physically strong, that's its only ability. In the second episode, an enemy stand enters Josuke's mom. Lucky bastard! In order to save his mother, Josuke punches a hole through her stomach and crushes a bottle inside of her. He then uses his stand's ability to repair the bottle around the enemy's stand and then heals his mother on the way out. We didn't need any setup for this moment because we the viewer already know what his ability does. Still, we're surprised by his creative use of his stand. This is common in the vast majority of JoJo's fights. Even if a stand's powers don't necessarily make sense, I'm looking at you, Heavyweather. We understand the rules around the power and are still surprised at the creative ways users use their abilities and respond to others. This is the case with Yuta using Kenjaku's technique to take over Gojo's corpse. We know that Yuta can copy cursed abilities, and we know that he killed Kenjaku. So when this twist occurs, it doesn't feel like an ass pull unlike other twists like with Todo's reappearance. If you were thinking deeply about Yuta's powers, you could have reasonably guessed this incoming twist. We didn't need a scene of them discussing this possibility because the pieces were already there for the reader to put together. Quite a few of the other surprises in the JJK finale fall into this category. I wanted to bring this up in order to point out that while I do have the issues I've been talking about with the final chapters, the majority of surprises aren't bad or poorly set up. The final discussion point that I want to address is why I think the finale has these issues. Obviously, I believe that more chapters and additional setup would have solved a lot of these problems. That is the thesis of the video after all. However, this doesn't answer the question of why JJK ended the way it did. First, let me make it clear that I don't think this is because Gege is a bad writer. They did write the story, but throughout the rest of the manga, it shows that Gege knows how to write and set up cool and interesting twists. For example, Sukuna taking over Megumi. That moment was jaw-dropping, honestly, although I did get it spoiled for me when I was 3 chapters away and by a fucking Fortnite meme nonetheless.
Nah, yo. No, wait, pause.
The amount of spoilers just put out there by JJK readers was unreal, honestly. You probably already know that though, because I'm willing to bet that most of you watching had a major moment or two spoiled for you without your consent. Anyway, Sukuna taking over Megumi is a top tier twist. Try saying that 10 times fast. Top tier twist, 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 top tier twist. It wasn't that hard actually. We get a little bit of setup for it, but it's never just given away. Very early on, Itadori makes a deal with Sukuna to allow him to take over his body for 1 minute after Sukuna chants a phrase in exchange for Itadori being healed. It's not at all clear why Sukuna wanted to make this deal. After all, a rule is put in place that says Sukuna can't hurt or kill anyone during that minute. For me personally, this deal sat in the back of my mind for a long time. I would find myself wondering about this deal somewhat often when thinking about JJK. Why did Sukuna make this deal, and when and how will he use it to his advantage? I had no clue, and that excited me. This brings us to the Shibuya incident. Megumi summons Maharaga in order to fulfill his suicidal wish. Maharaga hasn't been tamed yet, and so he gives Megumi the backhand of the century. Sukuna arrives before Megumi dies, and he heals him with reverse curse technique while stating that he has future plans for the boy. This doesn't reveal the twist early, but it's another breadcrumb that smart fans could theorize about. Finally, during the Culling Games arc, Sukuna activated his control over Itadori and then turns one of his fingers into a cursed object. He then forces it into Megumi and then transfers himself to Megumi's body. This is a fantastic twist. The crumbs are there for those who can pick them up and put them together, but the rest of us are left out. Once the twist occurs, it's easy for everyone who didn't put it together to see the build up to the crazy moment. The second surprise I want to bring up is the one that I alluded to at the very start of this video. In chapter 222, we see Yuta and Inumaki talking vaguely about something. Yuta refers to that something with, "that'll be useful." What I'm pretty sure they're talking about here is the recorded cursed speech that Yuta uses against Sukuna while in Gojo's body. This gives Yuta an opening to damage Sukuna. A much smaller twist, but it still proves my point that Gege can set up twists and turns. There are dozens of other examples as well, but I'm pretty sure you get my point by now on this. The issues that are present in the finale aren't a direct result of Gege's inability to write a good twist, but instead I think it's due to one or two things. Possibly both. The first reason is genuinely mostly just my own speculation, but I don't think that it's impossible that a lot of the issues are present in the finale due to Gege's fatigue with writing the series. JJK started publishing in 2018, and after 6 years of writing it, it's not impossible that Gege was just getting tired of it and wanted to move on to whatever project they have planned next. The more concrete reason though is likely due to Shonen Jump itself. Now I want you to take all of this upcoming information with a grain of salt because most of my information came from TikTok and Reddit. But from what I understand, a large reason Jujutsu Kaisen ended the way it did is because of Shonen Jump. It's a weekly magazine, and so in all likelihood, when one of their series is coming to an end, they need a concrete end date in mind so they can line something else up to fill the slot. This factor, combined with it being weekly and likely very taxing to produce a chapter each week, and because of the breaks that Gege took during the finale's production, caused a lot of this information to be rushed through and skipped over. For example, my boy Hikari is fighting off screen almost the entire time. I don't doubt that Gege wanted to draw out this fight a lot more, but they probably just didn't have the time. In all, I really think that JJK would have greatly benefited from 10 to 30 more chapters with a focus on building up more to that finale. We of course didn't get this, and we never will, and that's okay. This video was not made to hate on JJK at all. It's definitely my favorite modern shonen manga and anime. Although on my overall ranking, it's definitely still beat by JoJo's for the record. I really liked what we got with JJK, but I also like to make videos like this one where I talk about the issues that are present in shows, games, and movies. Overall, I like most of the finale. While it's definitely not perfect, for the most part, it is pretty good. I'm definitely going to check out whatever Gege decides to write next, and once the rest of JJK is animated, it's going to be visually stunning. Let's just hope that the MAPPA animators are treated a little bit better this time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, why not check out one of my other ones? I've got videos on anime, movies, games, and TV shows, so you have plenty of options to pick from. I recommend checking out my last video on stand design in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. You might as well subscribe to see whatever I cook up next. See ya.
Don't you worry, it'll be okay. Don't you worry.